Amended bilateral air service agreement with the United Arab Emirates, reinforcing aviation ties between both nations. The agreement was signed by the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Mr. Festus Keyamo, during the ICAO Global Implementation Support Symposium 2025 in Dubai. This revised BASA ensures reciprocal rights for both countries, paving the way for expanded code-share agreements and interlining opportunities for Nigerian airlines. Well, let's get an understanding of what BASA really is. And we have, and of course, other issues in the aviation industry. We have renowned aviation analyst, Mr. Wole Shadare, joins us to talk more on this. It's good to have you join us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. Help us understand what the BASA agreement means. That's between Nigeria and United Arab Emirates. What do we stand to gain?
Thank you very much. BASA is just one of the agreements. Okay, let me put it simply. No airline or no country designates an airline to fly from point A to point B. There must be an agreement between two nations or multiple nations to agree on air services between two countries. So what it means is that you have a body of agreement that stipulates is actually not a straitjacket thing. One BASA with another country can equally be different from an agreement with another country depending on how both countries reach an agreement. What it simply means is that if the two governments, they meet to say, okay, we want to do air transport service to your country because the country has the right to protect its airspace or to make sure a particular airline that is allowed to operate into that country operates. So bilateral air services agreement is usually an agreement between two countries on flight rights. It means the number of flights, the number of times that you can come to my country, the number of times that I can also come to your country. But the problem now is that we have more than 90 bilateral air services agreements that Nigeria is not actually utilizing because our airlines do not have the capacity to reciprocate some of these agreements. So when you have an agreement like that, it depends on what you want. You can say, okay, since I do not have the capacity or my airline does not have the capacity to operate to your country, we can do commercial agreement. What it means is that you have all the rights to come to my country as many times as possible, but there must be something in return that you must give to us until we are ready to reciprocate that agreement. Unfortunately, that has been cancelled, so Nigeria does not benefit directly from the bilateral air services agreement because the commercial agreement had been, cancelled by a former Minister of Aviation, the government at that particular time,
Meet Benga Oreshegun, a fearless voice and an advocate for the truth. He's bringing fresh energy.
The airline. But with what we have done now, with what the government has done now, with the UAE, I think it is a good one, but we cannot rejoice yet until we begin to see the details and content of that agreement. Nobody knows exactly what is in that agreement, whether Nigeria has been just changed, whether it is a good one for Nigeria. I want to believe it will be a good one for Nigeria. We also want to believe that the minister would have seen all the things that we have clamored for, that bilateral air services agreement must be beneficial to Nigeria and must be beneficial to Nigerian airlines. Until we see the content of that agreement, it will be too premature to begin to rejoice over that bilateral air services agreement with the UAE.
Well, some would say that the aviation industry is really wobbling to fly high in the skies. But Nigeria Airlines, they've continued to grapple with, a series of challenges, reducing their level of competitiveness, just like you mentioned, across domestic and international space. But do you think this current minister is addressing these issues as expected?
I think we must praise the minister for what he has been able to do in the last 2 years. He has really done well. But if you look at the aviation industry as a whole in Nigeria, we had a lot of problems that started long before this administration, even long before the last administration, even long before the administration before the last one. We have to grapple with a lot of issues. We have to grapple with a lot of finance. Our airlines are not well financed, and the problem is not actually with the airlines. The problem has to be with the policy. Like I always told people that no Nigerian airline can be profitable with the type of loan, percentage on loan. There's no way you can survive with 30% or 25% loan interest. It will never work. And if you also look at it, Nigerian aviation industry seems to be at its infancy. Yes, the aviation industry in Nigeria will be 100 years this year, but we haven't really done so spectacularly well. And I think the minister is looking at some of these problems to tackle them headlong. But the problem we've always had is that by the time this minister leaves, another minister comes, we begin to have like policy change in policy direction, change in administration, and we begin to leave some of the things that we're supposed to do. The aviation industry in Nigeria is really suffering, but at the same time, we should look at the gains that we have made over the years and begin to build on those achievements and gains. Yes, we have a long way to go. The minister has tried, but we still have a long way to go if the aviation industry in Nigeria is to be reckoned with. Do not get me wrong, the aviation industry is very safe. Our airspace is very safe. It's one of the safest in the world. But there are so many other things other ingredients that could make our aviation industry to be better, financing, insurance, and so many other things. Yes, the minister has done well with the Cape Town Convention Practice Direction, which we actually make our airlines to access aircraft at a very low rate. So he has done well in that area. Like they say, Rome was not built in a day, but we need to be consistent. We need to be intentional about our policy, about the direction we really need to go to make this aviation industry what it should be.
I think 100 years is a long time for us as a nation. We are expected to be seeing a lot of things, but some persons will say, okay, we're already seeing some things because we see some state governments coming up with what we call cargo airports. How viable is this for the business of aviation in Nigeria?
Let me just say it without missing word that some of these airports are just conduits for some of those state governments to siphon money. Some are very good, like the one in Ogun State. I think the Ogun State government is so intentional about what they really want to do with that airport. Until recently, I was one of those who felt that that airport may not be viable. But with what I've seen and with some of the things that are coming out from that airport that will be completed before the second quarter, I think they're in the right direction. But you look at the airport in Osun State, you ask yourself, what are you building an airport for in Osun State? Some will argue that anywhere you build an airport, there will be development. You have an airport in Ibadan that is not even viable, then you're building another one in Osun that is even less than 60 kilometers, if I may say. So most of the time, these state governments, misplace their priorities. And I would have expected that huge amount of money will go into infrastructure in bettering the lives of their people rather than build an airport that you have just one flight or two flights a day, and that will continue to incur debt to the federal government, because most of these airports, after building them, they transfer them to funds, which is the federal government. And what you have is that we have so many airports that are viable, and that is why FAN has not really made the type of revenue it's supposed to make and keep. In the exercise that only 4 or 5 airports, or let's say less than 6 airports are viable. And what you make from these airports, viable airports, is what you expect on over 30 airports that at times you just have one flight. In the case of Digawa Airport, you have one flight a day or 3 flights in a week. How do you build an airport that you just have 3 flights a day? That is not economically viable, and it was a very big drain on the purse of the state government and even the federal government, because at the point the federal government had to assist them with funds. The same thing with airports in Ebola, the same thing with airports in BASA. I don't know why the state government do what they do, but a lot of people will also tell you that these airports are for the future, that with time, these airports will bring the desirable economic gains to the community where they are sited. But we are yet to see how these airports will be able to really, um, you know, give the return on investment for some of these facilities that they build. Yes, that of Anambra is very key, built by state government, and is really doing well. It's actually giving Asaba Airport and the Enugu Airport a run for their money, and that is understandable. Yes, because you look at Anambra State as a whole. The Anambra is a state that you have so many industries. It's a place where you have so many people that travel. The Igbo man love to travel, and a lot of economic activities are happening in Anambra State. So you can understand why we have airports in Anambra, but you cannot justify the reason why you have airports that are coming up in most of these places. Lagos State building an airport will be will be economically viable, because a lot of people within that axis of Ikoyi, Lekki, Ibeju-Lekki will easily use that airport instead of coming to Abuja, instead of coming to Ikeja here. But at the same time, it will really take the traffic off Murtala Mohammed Airport. But by and large, in the UK, you have more than 3-4 big airports in the UK because of the economic activities in that place. And the same thing, that of Lagos should be very economically viable because of the economic activities in Lagos. A lot of people who want to travel in the comfort of their homes by spending like just 5-10 minutes from their homes to the airport, rather than spend like 40 minutes, 50 minutes down to the mainland there to take their flight. So it will be good. As for other states, I do not see reasons why they are doing some of these things they are doing. We are having one in Osun, we are having one in Ekiti. Yeah, the Ekiti one too may be a little bit viable because of the Afeba Balola University that we have there. Or someone else will argue that we have 2 big institutions in Osun State, so the Osun Airport will be viable. We wait to see how viable Osun Airport will be and see what the state government intends to do with it. We have so many airports that they shouldn't have been built in the first place. They're just conduit for the state government to siphon money. That's simply what it is.
Well, let's talk about flight delays. In the past week, we've seen the NCAA, talk tough, make certain, orders, give certain directives, and even go to court, say that their legal team is aware of certain things or directives that they're given to the Kenyan airline. But on flight cancellations and other challenges at the airport, how well have they been, addressed? Is it just going to be a toothless dog backing at this time, or are we going to really see some action being put in place or some sanity in our airspace?
Thank you very much. I think for a very long time, we've seen a regulatory body that has been up and doing in terms of delays, flight cancellations, and we have also seen, for the first time in a long time, sanctions being imposed on some of these airlines, on airpeace, or even on international airlines like Ethiopian Airlines, like Kenya Airways, Turkish Airlines. So we're beginning to see a regulatory body that is really waking up to its responsibilities, unlike what we had in the past. So I think there's also that consciousness by the airlines that whatever you do to impugn or to make passengers to delay flights or make maltreat passengers will be met with stiff or stiffer penalty by the regulatory body. We are beginning to see the airlines wake up to their responsibilities. Not only flight delays and cancellation, we have also seen where NCA has put its foot down to say, if you're not flying passengers, you must quickly make a refund. I think we're beginning to see a shift from what we used to have, which must be commended. I think the NCA has done well, but that is not to say that they should go to sleep. They should make sure that that aspect of consumer protection is reinforced and continue to put the airlines on their toes because passengers have suffered enough. Passengers will be at the airport for close to 3, 4, 6, 7, even 10 hours. It's unheard of. And the rules are there that if you're not taking passengers to their destination, maybe due to flight delays, due to what they call operational reasons. I don't know what those operational reasons are, but it's a word or a sentence that, or a phrase that, people really do not understand. But I think the SA is on top of their game. But what we do is to encourage them to do more, to make sure that these airlines are not only brought to book, but they are ashamed for, taking passengers for granted. Last year, November, December were the two horrible months we had when it came to flight delays and flight cancellation. Yes, we agree that flights can be delayed if it is not safe for the aircraft to operate. We also believe that flights can also be cancelled if there are issues that are not favorable for the safety of that airline, of that safety of that aircraft, I mean to say. So, at the same time, no airlines want to keep passengers at the airport without flying them because once you delay a flight or you cancel a flight, it has a serious effect on your operation for the whole day. But at the same time, we also need to look at the VIP movement that the airlines have complained about on so many occasions. We have VIP movement that, the airspace is closed whenever the president is traveling, whenever important people are traveling, we close the airspace for 30 minutes, 1 hour. I think the government should look into that and make sure that VIP movements are minimized to a reasonable level so that the airlines will not be the ones to make huge losses. Because by the time you keep passengers on ground, you're burning fuel or you're in the air, you need to hover for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. That brings apprehension to the passengers, apprehension to the flight crew, and in most cases, when you don't have enough fuel, you have to make an emergency in another airport, and that costs a lot, and that puts a lot of pressure on the crew and on the airline. So we need to look at all these things holistically and make sure that we need this in the board. Yes, I agree, but that flights can be delayed, but no flight should be delayed more than 2 hours or 3 hours. When you're going to cancel flight, you make provision for the passengers, you make provision for them to ensure that they are properly taken care of. But the opposite is the case here in Nigeria, where flights are cancelled. Nobody is giving you information of what has happened to the flight. They keep telling you our flights are delayed because of operational reasons. Nobody understands what these operational reasons are. So the NCA needs to do more. They've done a lot, but we must commend them for the little they have done. But we should not also commend them for the little they have done because they are paid to do the job which they were asked to do. So they need to go more, they need to put more pressure on the airlines. They need to balance things too because the airlines too are also not having it easy because of the lack of infrastructure, the VIP movement like I've mentioned in the past. only ones that suffer from all of this.
But just before we let you go, I know whenever we get you on the show, we like to glean as much as we can from your wealth of knowledge. But share your thoughts really quickly on the outlook for the aviation sector, considering the global and domestic issues that is disrupting the entire industry.
Yeah, the aviation industry is good, not only for Nigeria, but globally. Airlines are going to make profit, but African airlines are not going to make that type of profit. The African airlines are the lowest on the rung of the ladder when it comes to profitability. And the reasons are not perfect because most African airlines do not have maintenance facilities. There's no way you can run a successful airline without having a maintenance facility like the MRO, because the MRO takes the chunk of your revenue. So it's better for you to have the maintenance place where you can do your maintenance in-house rather than ferry your aircraft to Morocco, South Africa, UK, US for maintenance. This costs a lot of money. So you also look at, like I said earlier, African airlines are poorly financed because of most financiers do not trust African airlines enough to begin to commit their resources into funding. So, and the situation where they get loans at 25%, 35% interest rate, there's no way they can be profitable. Only one or two airlines in Africa have remained profitable for more than 20 years, and that is Ethiopian Airlines. And until recently, Kenya Airways and South African Airways that have had its own issues, but have repositioned itself to be one of the biggest airlines in Africa. They are doing well. Aside these three airlines, maybe one or two other airlines outside Nigeria, the future looks very bleak in terms of airline operation. But we have them. If the policies are right too, if government policies are right, I think the airlines will be profitable. We also look at connectivity. Our airlines are fully connected, and Africa is fully connected. But because most times when you want to travel from maybe Lagos to
it's always really terrible.
Or Kenya, you have to go through Europe before you can connect. And the certain single Africa air transport market has not been ratified by all the 54 African nations. Some countries are still very protective of their airlines instead of looking at the bigger picture of connectivity. You can't be profitable if your connectivity is poor, if your connectivity is low. And that is why you see many European countries, many European nations are more profitable. Even the list of airline is even more profitable than the biggest airline in Nigeria. So we begin to tinker with some of this. We begin to get, remove our hands from protectionism and begin to look at liberalization, interlining, co-share, and some of the partnerships that can really help our airlines rather than operating in a small, isolated, fragmented manner.
Mr. Shadare, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I tell you, you always just make the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us always. We appreciate your thoughts on some of the issues we've raised in the aviation industry. Thank you. We've been speaking with aviation analyst, Mr. Wole Shadare. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, it's now time to review